Hello, everyone. My name is Lois Lynn. I'm a dietitian and lifestyle medicine professional, and I recently published this book, December 13, 2024. And we're going to talk a little bit about the book and why it's important. The topics for today are: who is Lois Lynn? I'll give you some scientific background for plant-based eating. There'll be some terminology. And then the meat of the subject matter is how plant-based eating improves health, particularly for weight, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, cancer, and menopause. And then if you're interested in the book, I'll tell you how to get it. So who is Lois Lynn? I was a food and nutrition student at Queens College many moons ago. And at 26 years old, I became a registered dietitian. That's my stepfather there. He wanted to get in the picture. While I was a student at Queens College studying nutrition, I read about these Seventh-day Adventists in California, Loma Linda, California. And what they do is they advise their congregation to not smoke, not drink caffeine, and to eat a vegetarian diet. And for their eating, they run the gamut. Some people are only plants, some eat some fish, some eat some dairy and eggs, some eat everything. And that's a good diversity to study to see the difference in health. And what we found is the more whole food, plant-based a person ate, the lower their risk of any disease. Particularly these chronic diseases that many Americans get: heart disease, diabetes, several cancers, osteoarthritis, which are bone to bone, and then the soft tissue are like the joint pains. And because of my reading of this, I said, well, okay, let me see what it's like to eat like this. I ate as a lacto-ovo vegetarian for 6.5 years. And then I said, let me try this vegan thing. For 6 months, I tried the vegan thing. And then I was going from one block on 42nd from Lexington to 3rd. And I had a tachycardia, which is the heart beat out of control. And I never had that before. And I didn't understand it. So I said, okay, I'm just going to eat meat. I'm just going to eat everything. And then in my 30s and 40s, I ate the quote unquote healthy standard American diet that many can relate to. And I did not want to get osteoporosis. I was determined. So I followed the marketing, and I had the yogurt and cheese 2 or 3 times a day. And this way I would be determined to get enough calcium so that I wouldn't get osteoporosis. However, during menopause, I gained weight, 40 pounds. After age 50, every year it was 7 pounds more and more and more and more until then. And I had to figure this out. But during that time, I had acid reflux, which I have never had in my entire life. I had weak knees because I gained so much weight that the weight impacts how the knees can support the body. So my normal clothing size was either an 8 or a 10. And then I started to go to a 12 and a 14. And I said, oh, no, this is it. I have to figure this out. So I was squeezing into pants that were 2 sizes too small. And if you've ever done that, it's a very tricky thing to do, because I almost broke a finger trying to squeeze myself into my pants. I also put myself in physical risk. I did love to hike the Palisades of New Jersey. If you know, right across from Manhattan is the Palisades in New Jersey. And it's this rocky expanse, which many hikers enjoy. And if you can see these boulders there, the nighttime, for the 3rd time, my hike there, it was during the night, and I had gained some weight. And just shortly into the hike, my foot slipped into the Hudson, so my foot was wet, and that's no fun. And then when it got really dark, I wasn't prepared with a nightlight that other people had on the top of their head here. And somebody had to help me throughout the entire hike to get to the end because I really wasn't capable of climbing up and over these large boulders anymore. I just wasn't physically fit enough. Most people, we started the hike at 7, most people finished at 10 p.m. Me and somebody who had helped me through the entire hike finished at 3 a.m. And that beautiful hike leader was waiting in the parking lot for us. So a lot of not so nice things happened during menopause. And at the time, I would look at my uncle who was in his 90s and I said, "How did you get to be 90? I can't even get past 50." So I had to figure it out. How can I improve my health here? This is a kind of a progression. At 49, you can see the same shirt at 56. At 49, I'm a size 8 or 10. You can see my shirt isn't quite filled out, but when I got to 56 with 40 pounds more, you can see I was busting out of the shirt. And never take a picture of somebody eating because those are the worst pictures. But that's what I have, so that's what you have. And the way I actually lost the weight was this weighing and measuring every ounce of food that I ate. It took about 9 months, and I got down to a size 6, which I've never been in my entire life, except maybe when I was 16. And I think most of the time while I was on that, I was plant-based. I was at a barbecue, a Memorial Day barbecue, and a relative of a friend brought some food that they started eating. And what it was Dr. Furman's nutritarian diet, which is what they were following. The woman had had breast cancer. She didn't want it again. Her husband had heart disease and hypertension and overweight. They were both overweight and they just wanted to be healthy. And they shared their food. And then they told me when Dr. Furman had an all-day seminar about nutritarian eating, and I attended. And this is the picture when I first met him. And so I learned about this way of eating, and I enjoyed it. I started to enjoy cooking. But lo and behold, there's some good news and some bad news in the health space for me. You know, the only way you can truly diagnose osteoporosis is if somebody has a fracture. And in my 40s, I was rollerblading. I bought rollerblades and I learned how to rollerblade in Central Park and Riverside Park, the two parks near me. And I said, okay. And I was out in Riverside Park near me where I live, and they have this long, steep decline that curves at the bottom to go towards the water. And my rollerblades were going so fast that I couldn't stop, and I slid headfirst into this iron gate. And I was kind of like in shock. I couldn't talk. And a couple of people called 911. An ambulance came. It was my only time in an ambulance. And when I was in physical therapy for my knee, a physical therapist was working on my back. And I said, can you not massage bone? Can you massage muscle, which is what you're supposed to do? And he didn't. He just kept putting pressure on my spine. And then I heard crack, and he literally broke my spine. And that was at age 40. So there's something to be said here, and that is that we all hear the marketing about drink milk for your bones, have dairy for your bones. But if you look at the research shows that the countries of the world with the highest dairy intake, like Switzerland, have the highest incidence of fractures, which is the true sign of osteoporosis. Even though at 58, I had a bone scan that confirmed I still had it, the real true way to find out is if a person has a fracture. So I had it at 40. Nobody really diagnosed it, but I had the official diagnosis practically 20 years later. So that's the bad news. The good news now that I'm eating whole food, plant-based, I go to the dentist 4 times a year. And some people, when they brush their teeth or they get a cleaning, their teeth bleed. And I asked my dentist after I had the cleaning, I said, "How'd I do?" And she said, "Not a drop." And then I said, how many people can you say that about? And she said, "Not many." So I think that eating whole food plant-based has at least helped my soft tissue in my mouth. And I would say that that represents more of what's happening inside me as well. So that's a good thing. I'm a perpetual student and I've accumulated a few credentials over the years. The RD has been around for a while, and then the state wanted to certify people and became a certified dietitian nutritionist. And then on Halloween Day in 2019, I was the third or fourth group of people to sit for something new, which is this lifestyle medicine credential. Lifestyle medicine is different from specialist. Lifestyle medicine has 5 pillars. And the first pillar is the foundation is whole food, plant-based foods. The second is exercise, sleep, stress management, substance use cessation, and supportive relationships. So they take the entire person into consideration. And then Dr. Furman had a credentialing program, and so I got the inside scoop as well as a dietitian. Now let's go into some terminology for plant-based eating and then how it can improve health, particularly weight, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, cancer, and menopause. When we eat, we have to digest our food in order for it to create energy. That's the ultimate purpose of us eating, is to give us the raw materials. And most people are familiar with protein, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, and minerals. And this on the right is a cell in our body. And the little red things, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. They are things called mitochondria. And that is inside the cell what produces energy for us. So we eat to produce energy. And during the digestive process, this is a natural part of everyday life for everybody, is we need to also breathe oxygen in order to help create that energy. And that process is called oxidation. And if you look at the apple, you can see on the right, there's a little bit brown. It's starting to oxidize. The oxygen is getting in there and starting to break down the apple. And it's kind of like rust. Something you see iron rust, it turns brown. On the left is the fresh apple before it's oxidized. And just understand, this is a little bit of chemistry, but I simplified it so that you can just understand what's going on when this is kind of the foundation of many of the chronic diseases we see today. So you get the concept of what's happening and how to mitigate it, how to help it to not get out of control. Because when it gets out of control, it's called oxidative stress. A little bit is important, but we want it to do its job and then calm down. So what happens is, this is an atom, this blue colored thing in the middle, and around this is a molecule, and around every molecule is electrons that go around it. And those electrons help to have things happen in our body. That whole process of, for example, exchanging a neurological signal from one place to the other so I can move my hand. And during the digestive process where the browning happens, you see the X is one of the electrons is missing. And Electrons like to be paired. They like, just like humans, they like to be paired. And when they're not paired, when one's missing like that, that becomes an oxidative situation. Without the electron, it's called a free radical. And it's okay in small doses, but when it gets out of hand, that's the foundation of diseases that starts to eat away at cells and tissues, and then we start to have medical problems. And this is what it could look like. Too much of that oxidative stress turns into inflammation, just like if you get a cut and it turns red. Well, these are different diseases that could happen that underlie that oxidative stress. The precipitating factor for inflammation is that too much oxidative stress. So we want to be careful not to have too much oxidative stress, and our food can help that. So the diseases can happen anywhere in the body where there's a weakness. And I mean, literally anywhere. Good health is different for everybody, but there are certain things that you really look for, that you enjoy, that you want to keep in your life. Maybe you can write in the chat, what are those good health things that you like, that you want to preserve in your body? Just write them in the chat, and then maybe Bob can say them out loud, or we can talk about them later.
Okay.
I'll give you like a half a minute or something just to write a few things of what does it mean to you to have good health?
Okay. Susan said being able to walk. I
Right?
definitely can echo that one right now.
For sure. We need to be independent so that we can get around. Mobility is very important. Like when somebody stops driving, all of a sudden their whole life changes. What'd you get now?
Okay. Barbara said clear thinking and lots of energy.
Great.
Healthy
Great.
aging.
Maybe clear thinking for sure. So how do we make sure that this oxidative stress doesn't get out of control? You can see there's an orange or a lemon there that's being squeezed, and that is preserving the apple from oxidative stress. It's, if you look here, the lemon juice is donating the electrons so that the electrons will be paired, which is stable, and then the oxidation doesn't happen. And when we eat certain foods, we get that donation. If we don't eat those foods, we don't get so many of this donation to help stabilize things. So here's a healthy plate that I prepared. They're basically the food groups of whole plant foods. There's fruit, vegetables. The leafy greens are particularly important as an alternative for dairy. That's where we get our primary source of calcium. There's legumes, which are beans, peas, and lentils, whole grains. It looks like corn, rice, and some other grain there. Whole fats are nuts and seeds, and herbs and spices to have the food taste good. Now, these are the categories of foods that are not so familiar, but help us so that the oxidative stress does not get out of control. The first one is antioxidant, against too much oxidation. And the immunity triad are vitamins A, C, and E. Together, they help this oxidative process to do its job and then calm down. Because it's always donating that electron, which is what we need. We need our food to help donate electrons so that we can preserve what we have, the tissues that we have. Even though we have to create energy, we want to preserve what we have. Then there's something called plant chemicals, phytochemicals. Phyto means plant. And what it is, you know how a plant is in the ground and it can't go anywhere, it can't run away, it can't hide, it can't put a coat over itself. protection. So what it does is it creates chemicals to help it against the weather, against bacteria, fungus, viruses, against insects, all kinds of things, animals. So it creates these chemicals, and the chemicals have certain colors. And you can see based on the color, the more colorful, as we go down, the more colorful, the deeper the color, like the purple sweet potato, the more of these donations that we'll get that will help to keep us in one piece. Then there's filtered water. We just want clean water. But when we eat fruits and vegetables, they're very high in water. And that is a good thing, because when we get a watery food like cucumbers, celery, our cells can take in that water much more readily than if we just drank a glass of water. You know, when you drink a glass of water, it just goes right through you. But if you're eating water, even in a soup, it'll stay with you longer, and it'll go into your cells and hydrate your cells in a really good way. The last thing here is soluble dietary fiber. We're going to go into a lot of detail about this because it has absolutely no calories, but is absolutely critical to our health. And only 3% of Americans get enough. It would be nice that 97% would get it. And this way we'd have less disease. Well, let's look at that for a second. There's a lot of information here, but we're just going to start here. So somebody eats a bowl of food, and this food is whole plant food. And you can see it's got chickpeas and red peppers and these bean balls probably, and some greens, and right? But all of that has dietary fiber. And for an average person of 2,000 calories, that would be 28 grams of fiber a day is the recommendation. This fiber is the food for the probiotics. You know, when you eat, most people are familiar with yogurt, right? Yogurt is where probiotics, you think, oh, I have to eat yogurt to get the probiotics, or some fermented food. Well, in order for the probiotics to stay alive, they need to eat. And what they eat is dietary fiber. Dietary fiber is their food. And in fact, when you eat whole plant foods, they will come with the bacteria, and the bacteria will populate your colon, the very big round, this squarely circular thing at the very end of your colon, where food stays a little bit longer so that the bacteria can ferment. And what it does is it creates these short chain fatty acids to do good things for us. You ever hear something called SIBO or leaky gut? Well, that's when we don't get enough dietary fiber. And then you can see the little pink fingers in the middle. Well, they're very separated like this, like fingers, very separated. Then food can get through that shouldn't go through yet. But if they're very tightly together like this, where your fingers are close together, then nothing can get through. It's like the blood of when I went to the dentist. Some people bleed easily, some people don't. So the fiber helps to create integrity of the inner linings of our intestines and our blood vessels. The bacteria also, so here these prebiotics is the food, probiotics is the bacteria, and these probiotics create postbiotics. So it's pre, pro, and post. The postbiotics is what we need. We need the byproducts that the probiotics create, which help us improve our health. They also inform our immune system. And something very interesting is The human body, the DNA is only 1% human. 99% of the DNA in a human body is bacteria. And if we can feed the bacteria, the healthy bacteria, then we will be healthy. And you remember during COVID, you heard the cytokine storm. Well, this dietary fiber creates these short chain fatty acids that help to down-regulate this inflammation, which is a good thing. It also helps with mineral absorption. It helps you to burn fat for calories. That's a good thing. And it also, have you heard in the news that people are taking these injections for weight loss called GLP-1s? Well, and then it has a lot of side effects. And what I just heard recently is 80% stop after 6 months because it's just too hard. And when they do stop, all their weight comes back. So it's kind of like a little game they're trying to play, but it doesn't really work properly because they're not really getting at the root cause. The root cause is we need to eat these whole plant foods that provide the dietary fiber to feed the probiotics so that they can create natural GLP-1, which tells your brain you're full when you eat a lot of beans and whole grains and things like that. Here are examples of foods from practically every food group that has soluble fiber. We want both soluble and insoluble. The insoluble just kind of helps to push things along so that it's easier to have a bowel movement. Beans, peas, lentils, fruits, vegetables, they all have dietary fiber. And these seeds and oats, if you can include these every day, you're really helping yourself and in every meal. And if you're starting and you don't usually eat these, well, add a new one once a week, have one once a day, just and keep adding to your food groups, to the different varieties that you include in your meals. To summarize the terminology, we eat protein, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals, the antioxidants, the phytochemicals, the dietary fiber, and the water because we need to produce energy. And when we digest food, it naturally produces oxidative stress, but we don't want it to go crazy and cause inflammation. We just want it to help us create energy. And then disease can happen wherever the most vulnerable organ is. It's different from a genetic disease someone is born with. This is something that we have control over. We have more control than we think. These diseases that happen later in life are environmental. It's in our environment. Food is part of our environment, chemicals, pollution. These are social structures. They're all part of our environment and can influence disease. And to be healthy, at least at the food level, is to start with whole plant foods, which will help with weight management, breathing, moving, good mood. Actually, your brain will feel better and you'll have the energy to live. So let's go into the details of different disorders or situations that people have. So for weight management, there's protein, carbohydrates, but these are healthy carbohydrates. And the beans and the whole grains, they're very low calorie and they're low fat. They help you to be full faster. And because the absorption is slow over time rather than a huge hit from something refined, it keeps you full longer. If you have 2 servings, a serving is a half a cup, and 4 servings of whole grains could be quinoa, oats, those kinds of things. They will help to reduce your waist circumference better than refined carbohydrates. And yeah, 3 servings, 4 servings, just better than a half a serving, which is probably what most people are getting now. So these are kinds of very conscious efforts we need to make, because there's a lot of noise out there of refined foods that we want to kind of stay away from. For diabetes, there's a low glycemic index for beans, and that also slows the blood sugar rise and prevents spikes, which is what we want. We just want a slow, steady energy production. A cup of beans can improve the A1C better than just the bran layer. And whole grains, two servings at each meal, which is about a cup of grains, but a whole grain. Ezekiel bread, I don't know if you're familiar with that, a sprout, and they also have sprouted tortillas. Heart disease, nuts. Nuts are the #1 food category to reduce LDL cholesterol, which is what our doctors want us to reduce because that creates plaques. So we want a good fat will counteract a bad fat. And these are raw nuts that we use in cooking and preparing sauces and marinades and things. But the beans, the legumes, and the whole grains also help. And then the soluble fiber here, again, is going to soak up the LDL cholesterol and take it out of the body. And these are just a summary, also barley, they're all good. Hypertension is a little different. Hypertension is really getting enough potassium so that there's not so much sodium. We need a little less sodium and a little more potassium. And if we eat the whole foods, the beans, peas, lentils every day at every meal, or 2 out of the 3 meals, then we'll be getting much more potassium, which is what we need. And these whole foods. Magnesium we also need to relax the blood vessels. We don't get enough of these nice minerals that are very helpful. The soluble fiber, again, is because it slows the nutrient absorption, it stabilizes the blood pressure, and it stabilizes the sodium level. The dark greens and the beets, the root vegetables, they have the potassium, and they create this thing called nitrates that get converted into nitric oxide that relax the blood vessels so the blood vessels can open for more blood to flow through, and they'll lower your blood pressure. For cancer, there's two things it does. Here, it destroys soybeans. The BRCA1 and 2 are for breast cancer. They help for the tumors to kill the tumors. And then if somebody gets breast cancer, it will help prevent a recurrence and it will improve their survival. And the similar for prostate cancer risk. So soy foods are actually very healthy. The whole grains, they help with colorectal and breast cancer. The insoluble fiber helps to move it, as we said. The soluble fiber helps to prevent the tumors from forming. And 3 to 8 servings, the same as said before. So that same amount can help many disorders. Now, once the cancer cells are done away with, then we need to repair what was damaged, repair the damage, and the vegetables help with that. The purple sweet potato has this purple anthocyanin that will help to repair the DNA for several cancers. The dark green leafy vegetables will also help to repair the DNA for several cancers. And lastly, menopause. Soy foods are actually very health promoting for menopause because it alleviates hot flashes and it improves artery health in menopausal women. 2 to 4 times a day is fine. In summary, you can see legumes are clear across the board for every disorder, helps to improve it, makes it better. The whole grains most of the time, and you can see what it does: weight, satiety, diabetes, slow the blood sugar, the heart disease, you want to poop out the LDL cholesterol. For hypertension, you want to get that nice sodium potassium balance with more potassium from your veggies. And for cancer, we want to destroy and repair tissue. And we know about menopause, we want to alleviate hot flashes and improve artery health. If you're interested in how to create a few recipes and read about the science, there is this whole food plant-based meal planning book where you can read about it. And the Cooking with Whole Plant Foods is my original book in 2018. And thank you. And if you